We're excited to have this opportunity to talk to these distinguished ladies and gentlemen who bring so much to the table at such a critical time of thought, giving us an opportunity to think deeply about where we have been and where we are going, and how we are going to be able to preserve who we are and what we have and project it into the future and protect our heritage, our roots, our background, and our vision for the future. And each one in their own way has brought something, a gift to give us today, to help us to better understand and to think and to reflect on how we perceive ourselves, because if we do not perceive ourselves correctly, then we can't expect other people to understand what we have overlooked. So we're gonna jump right into it. I don't have a lot of time for all the things I want to ask. I'm gonna go ladies first. I'm gonna go right to the middle and go right to Abby Phillips. Abby has just come back from writing a book. She's released a new book. She's gonna tell you about the book and, more importantly, the subject of the book.
Well, Reverend Jakes, thank you so much for having me, and thank you everybody for being here. It's great to be here. Anytime John Hope Bryant calls me, I show up.
Absolutely.
So, I first want to say that it's great to be with all of you on this stage, and particularly at this moment. I mean, I think the book is really not just about one man, Jesse Jackson, who I'm sure all of you know, but it's about all of us. It's about our history. It's about what we know about our own history. And it's also a little bit about where we're headed, potentially, as a nation. This book takes a very close look at the efforts that he made to be engaged in politics specifically. You know, he's done a lot of things in his life, but this looks at his political contributions and the journey of this man who came from very simple upbringing all the way to the debate stage, seeking the presidency, and the vision that he had for this country, for what America could be if we find a way to talk to and with each other, with the idea of unity in mind. That vision and that dream of Jesse Jackson's was something that was revolutionary at the time in the 1980s, in 1984 and 1988, but today it's so relevant because it feels like we are in this moment where we're still trying to figure out, how do we live with one another? Right. How do we deal with this democracy, this multiracial democracy that we have? And I argue in the book that he offered some lessons about what that can look like, how you can acknowledge the uniqueness and the individuality of every person in this nation, Black, white, Asian, Arab, Jewish, Christian, whatever you are, acknowledging that, bringing that into the fold, while also saying we actually have more in common than we have that is different. And the book is about what he tried to do and failed to do, but all the groundwork that he laid for the moment that we are in now.
I want to ask you another question. I may not ever get this chance again, so I want to ask you something that I've been giving deep thought to. When I grew up, I'm going to give my age away, we only had 3 TV stations. Channel 3, Channel 8, Channel 13, okay? It wasn't hard to get high ratings because you didn't have the 3 choices, okay? One of them was gonna win. Today, we've got 300 and some stations. We've got people streaming, we've got disinformation, misinformation, everything available to us to receive information. Only 28%, according to a recent study, really believe in the news and really have a commitment to the news. And there are 40% who really don't look to the news, the traditional news, to get their information. And I'm wondering, working in that situation, how do you press through to increase those numbers and win back the ears and the eyes of America so that you can project us and move us forward?
You know, in a word, I would say it's honesty. I think that what we are trying to do is give people something that feels real, that feels more authentic than what you are used to getting on television. And I think that is where things are headed. All the fracturing that's happened in the media landscape, what that really has shown is that people gravitate toward characters and figures and public figures and celebrities who they identify with, who they feel like they see something of themselves in that feels real and authentic to them. And I do think that news, in some ways, has gotten so produced that it feels less like that now. And one of the things that we kind of stumbled upon, frankly, in our show, Newsnight, is this big table conversation that feels like, for good or for bad, your Thanksgiving dinner table conversation. Sometimes you got people at the table and you're like, what is up with this guy? And that's a little, and that's okay, right? They're your family. They, you know, they're at the table because they're family. And I think sometimes that's what our conversation feels like, is that we're all kind of sitting around and everybody's coming from a bit of a different place, and it gets a little bit messy, it gets a little loud sometimes, but it feels more real than sometimes the sanitized version of the debates that we have in our public sphere. Because let's be honest, I mean, this is a difficult time that we're in as a country, and we are struggling to talk to one another, struggling to understand one another, struggling to care about one another. And at the very least, I think what we try to do on my show that I think has worked is that we've said, you know what? We are actually going to talk to each other. You don't even have to agree at the end of the day, but we are gonna try something different. We're gonna hear really what the other side of the argument has to say. And we're gonna hash out the real issues that we're facing as a country. And again, we don't always come to some kind of neat conclusion, because I think that often there are not neat conclusions. But at least I think that effort is compelling to people. I think they feel represented in the different viewpoints. I think it's entertaining. It's 10 o'clock at night, so people are needing a reason to stay up when they want to go to bed. And that has worked for us. But I think that more honesty, more authenticity in the news, more just being transparent with people about what we know and what we don't know will help so much. Because if we're not doing it in the so-called mainstream media, people are gonna go out there and they're gonna find all kinds of crazy sources to get it from. And I think we need to be in that game of saying to people, it's not about whether everything looks pretty and perfect. It's about whether you feel connected to what you're hearing. And I think we can do better about that going forward.
You do a great job with that. I've seen you referee some pretty tough fights.
It is tough.
We're gonna get you a little striped outfit so you can keep them all together.
I gotta get a mute button. That's what I really need.
Say it again?
Yeah, a mute button.
Yeah, a mute button, yeah. It's a pretty tough time, even around the dinner table, any table you get around in the car, everybody has opposing opinions, even if they are the same ethnicity or the same family, and navigating that. And with the uncertainty of not knowing what's coming next is an amazing thing. I'm gonna digress for a moment and go to Jonathan Eig, and we're so pleased to have you here. He's a renowned writer. He's done a deep dive into MLK. We have seen a lot of his speeches. A lot of books have been written about what he said, but you go deeper than what he said. You go deeper into who he is. Can you tell us what you learned about him that we need to learn from?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel, and thanks to John Hope Bryant. But, when I began this book on Dr. King, it was a 6-year project, and I felt like we had lost sight of him as a man. Andy Young is here with us today. Ambassador Young is here. And
yes.
There were, I interviewed hundreds of people who knew Dr. King, including Ambassador Young. And what I realized was that we have begun to treat him as a monument, as a national holiday, as 1,000 streets running through America, but we've lost sight of the man. Right. And as Abby said earlier, if we don't know the history of where we've come from, we don't know where we are today and we don't know where we're going. You know, history is not something in the past, it runs through our lives. And Dr. King is very much running through our lives today. But if we treat him as nothing but a two-dimensional character, and we forget that he was a man who had feelings and failures and who had a pillow fight with Ambassador Young, we forget these kinds of human details, we lose sight of his true power, and he loses his ability to inspire us today. So I wanted to write a book that reminded people, not just that he was human, not just that he had flaws, how many times he failed, how many times he came back from those failures, but just a book that reminded us that he was someone much more difficult and much more controversial, much more radical than we celebrate today.
Right.
In 1966, 2/3 of all Americans in a Gallup survey said they disapproved of Martin Luther King. In his last years, and thanks to the FBI's horrible surveillance of him, we actually have recordings of his conversations with his closest friends, including Ambassador Young. And we can hear how sad he was and how he felt like no one was listening to him anymore. But what's important to remember about Dr. King, and one of the things that really struck me as I got to know him through this research, was that as he began to lose some of that popularity, after his peak on August 28, 1963 at the March on Washington, as his popularity began to decline, he doubled down on the challenging parts of his message. He began to speak out more about income inequality, about the failures of capitalism, about the dangers of militarism, about the sins of materialism. And all of this just continued to compound his unpopularity. And we know how difficult it was on him. We know that he gave this speech a year before his assassination at the Riverside Church, where he explained his philosophy and said it was all rooted in the Bible, that everything he did was not to be popular. It was because he truly believed the words of Jesus, and that he felt it was his responsibility to remind the world that you can't just pick the popular battles. You've got to have something you believe in, and you've got to be willing to die for what you believe in.
Right.
And King showed us that. He didn't just preach it, he showed us that. He walked the walk, he talked the talk, and if we listen to his words again, if we go back and read his writings, and not just the ones that make us comfortable. I tell teachers when I speak at schools, I know that you're doing a great job of teaching I Have a Dream. What about the first half of that speech?
Right.
What about the part he wrote out, the part he planned to say that day, which is about reparations, about income inequality, about police brutality? Let's teach that part too. Let's remember the full King story.
Right, right. Do you think that we run the risk when we idolize and make a monument out of a man? Do you think that we run the risk of not seeing future leaders of his ilk because we so deify them that it intimidates people from being eligible to continue the struggle with the same tenacity and fierceness that he did?
I think that's a real problem. We have a hard time embracing the fact that our heroes have flaws. King suffered from mental health issues all his life. He plagiarized his doctoral dissertation. And of course we know that he struggled with marital fidelity. People have a hard time with that. But I say that it just makes him more courageous because he knew his own weaknesses and he felt like he still had a responsibility to carry on. And if we demand that all of our heroes, all of our political leaders be perfect, we're never going to have any heroes because none of us are perfect.
Well, a lot of people don't want to run for office because they don't want the scrutiny that comes with that. And that scrutiny comes from every direction. It doesn't just come from the media, from journalists who have some standards and guardrails as to what they do and do not say. Now everybody is a journalist.
That's right.
Everybody who's got a phone is a journalist. And so it's hard to manage and to control how people perceive, how they project. And unfortunately, people will believe what they see on Instagram quicker than they will sometimes what they see on the major news. And I think some of our biggest and brightest people are afraid to go through the kind of scrutiny and put their family through the kind of abuse, the trauma that goes to their children. It's not an easy thing to go through. Abby, in your own life, you've had some moments where you had to protect yourself and your family and been threatened and ran into obstacles. How do you handle those kinds of things when people disagree with you and it flows past the working hours into your personal life?
I mean, this conversation I think is so important, both when I think about not just myself, I mean, I think my interaction with that kind of vitriol is fairly limited, because one of the things you learn very quickly is that the internet is not real life. And people say all kinds of things about you online because they're sitting in their homes, and
Child, please.
and it's really not, yeah, right? And you can let it affect you, you can sit in it, you can stew about it, you can think about your comeback, and at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. So I think one of the things, first of all, just as far as I'm concerned, I mean, there is the physical protection that everybody, unfortunately, I think probably all of us have had to deal with, where you have to really think about for the first time, okay, how do I protect myself and also my family? And just take reasonable precautions that people are not putting your address out there and doing things like that, which has also happened to me. But I don't think that feeding into this back and forth is particularly helpful, which I think some people fall into that trap, where the internet makes it seem as if something's said about you, you're gonna say it right back. And I think sometimes it's better to just leave it alone. But as Jonathan was talking about Dr. King and the sort of, what happens when you make a man a monument, but also what happens when you tear a man down. I think both things, make it hard for people to want to engage in public life. I mean, Dr. King's life was cut short. And because of that, I think it was easier for people to lionize him as a kind of one-dimensional figure. When I'm writing this book about Jesse Jackson, you realize a man who's lived 84 years and has done a lot of things, has lived long enough that he's become a villain to some people and a hero to others. And it's really neither of those things. I mean, I think both of these men are human. So many of these people of their generation, they are human. They have ups and downs and flaws, and they have things that they've done extremely well. But one of the things that separates them, that makes the difference between just a random person on the street and someone who does what they have done in their lives, is that they decided to get up and do something. They decided to, regardless of the consequences, leave their homes at some point in time and do a thing. And I think that is, to me, the most important lesson of our heroes when we think about the people who we lionize as our heroes. What are they? They are not perfect. They are not flawless, but they are people who acted. And we all have that capacity to act. And if we're only concerned about how we're perceived and whether people will love us or hate us, that will be debilitating. It will be impossible for us to act. And I think the more important thing is, what does it take for you to decide to do something about the problems that you're seeing in your world and in your communities? And the fortitude that it took for Dr. King and for Jesse Jackson and for Andy Young and for all of these people to not just get up off their couch and go outside, but to face death it's extraordinary. And I think the bar, honestly, is so much lower for us today. It's so much lower for us today. So we have no excuse. We have no excuse but to get up and do something, regardless of what people will say about us.
Do you think that Jonathan talks about how Dr. King went through depression and had emotional issues in regard to the things that were said and done about him? He was more, I'm convinced that America loves dead heroes.
Yeah.
Well,
they love dead
and
heroes.
especially Black ones.
Yes.
Because, I'm gonna be honest, because I do think it is easier to villainize people when they're alive than when they're, but to be honest, I mean, as Jonathan has written about, it wasn't like everybody was down with creating MLK Day or making a memorial on the National Mall. I mean, those were controversial things too, even decades after his death.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that unfortunately, there was a whole generation of people who did not live to see their elderly years because they were killed, they were assassinated.
Right.
And that is a complicated fact of American history, but it's a real one. And I do think that it has, in some ways, made it easier for people to say nice things about Dr. King when they feel like they don't have to grapple with the controversial parts of him or the human parts of him.
Yeah, Harry Belafonte said
Yeah.
to me that America only loves dead radicals.
Exactly.
And he felt like the holiday had actually done more harm than good because it had given us only the safe version of Dr. King's story, only the parts that make us comfortable.
Right.
And we got to fight back against it.
It's kind of like preaching a funeral, you know, no matter what kind of life the guy lived, you know, you got to send him to heaven.
You got to say something.
The last 5 minutes, he got to go to heaven, you know. The chariot got to come get him. He might be drunk, but the chariot has got to come get him. Yeah, I'm going to get out of that. That's all I'm going to say about that. I want to know, Abby, did you have to go through a metamorphosis to build up the thick skin that is necessary to tolerate the harsh things that are said about you? I know in my own life, it's shocking. I mean, it's shocking. It is not enough to be talented, gifted, and educated. You also have to be resilient internally in a way that people would not even believe the things you go through because they don't even think you're human.
Yeah,
because they see you on TV.
Well,
when did you change and how did you
What I
do
will
it?
say is, you know, I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor.
Oh, okay.
And I remember one of the things that I will never forget, my dad would always say, because we weren't allowed to do a lot of things growing up, a lot of things. And he would always say, you're gonna be in this world, but not of the world.
Right.
In the world, but not of the world. And that has taken on so many different meanings for me. But what in this moment, what it means for me is that it's almost like a live by the sword, die by the sword type of thing. If I am getting all of my self-esteem and my self-awareness from other people, from the world, then I would be torn down. I would feel like nothing. And you can't live your life like that. And the other part of my upbringing in the church is that, you know, I choose not to respond in kind to everything that comes at me. I do not want to become my so-called enemy by resorting to the types of tactics and strategies and mindsets that people can put you in just by saying something about you.
Right.
I mean, if you've ever noticed that when somebody says something negative about you, all of a sudden it makes you angry. It changes your disposition.
Yeah.
It changes your mindset. It hardens your heart.
Yeah.
And I still work on this. I mean, this is a day-to-day practice. But I literally sit there and I say to myself, I am not going to allow them to make me hate. I am not going to allow them to make me angry. I am not going to allow them to make me a person that I don't want to be, a person who is more like them and less like me. And so I got that from my faith, from knowing that, you know, love thy neighbor, all of that, you know, knowing that I am not supposed to reciprocate all the energy that comes at me, that I'm supposed to take the people who hate me and return love and kindness to them. And that is not popular these days. It is not easy to do.
No.
I know that a lot of people think it's naive and stupid.
No.
I don't, because I choose peace in my life. And some people, they feel good when they're firing back. That is so short-lived. I don't even go there. It is so short-lived. It is so temporary. What is not temporary is peace. And you have to find your ability to center yourself. That's what I do. I do it every single day. Every single night, I lay in my bed, and you know what it's like when you're sitting there, whether you're in prayer or you're in meditation or both.
Right.
And that is what I've chosen for my life. And I know it is not a popular thing these days. Everybody wants a clap back. But I'm just here to tell you that feels good in the moment, but it is not going to give you peace.
No,
It is
it
not.
only elongates the problem and makes it worse. You took a very theological approach to it that I can really, really appreciate. Mine is a little less theological, more practical, but profound nonetheless. So we traded places here for a minute. I refuse to put my thermostat in somebody else's pen. Okay, for me, that's too much power
Yep.
to give you, for you to be able to wreck my day. And by the way, you don't even know me.
That part.
You know, you
That
don't
part.
know me, I don't know you, and maybe it's best that it stay that way. But one thing that I'm sure of, one thing that I'm absolutely sure of, is that I do not want the control of my day to be left in the hand of a stranger who neither cares about me, knows me, or understands me. And we all have the right to choose who you give the power to be able to hurt you. And some people cannot handle that power. And I think you give that power away when you allow what they say to hurt you and to wound you and to demoralize you. Often they're just doing it for fun. They're just doing it for kicks and giggles.
Yep.
And you're over there bleeding. And I'm going to stop the bleeding because I'm going to get to Van. I made him sit over there and wait all that time. And he's itching and bleeding. They have reminded us of our roots, of what started us, what developed us, what made us, what helped us to transition, become the people that we are. My concern is books are being taken off the library shelf. They're being taken out of the schools. Access to material, monuments, history, oral documents, museums are all being ripped away or challenged in this hour. How do we protect the message going into the future? And what do you think about delivering this message so that our grandchildren will know that God was with us when we crossed the Jordan? I went back to my theology. Okay. What stones do we leave behind as a memorial that says we did not get here by ourselves? We picked cotton. My daughter came home when she was a little girl, and she's maybe in the 3rd grade, and she said, "Is it true, Mama, that we came from slaves?" Because that's the way they taught us that Black history began when we got off the boat. They did not teach us who we were before. And back then, we did not leave the teaching of Black history in the hands of the teacher. No. We taught our children at home who they were. We taught them at church who they were. We put a force field around them so that when they went to school, they already had some sense of identity. And the last thing I said to my baby boy before I let him out of the car to go to college is, don't you go there and forget who you are. Yeah. Because you learned who you were at home. How do we protect that going forward?
Well, let me say a couple things. First of all, to be here with Abby is such a joy for me.
Thank you.
Being in cable news, there's 320 million people in the United States. There are 135 people in the country who are paid to be hosts on cable television. 6 of them are Black women. She's the youngest and the most successful. She's the youngest and the most successful. I said she's the youngest and the most successful. So as one of the OGs, I could sit here all day. My soul is rested watching a star rise up. And I think about how young she is, and I think about how young Dr. King and Andy Young were in their moment. And I think that sometimes as Black folks, we get something I call temporal disorientation. Temporal disorientation. Sometimes we get confused about time and how time works. The reality is, Dr. King, in 1963, a 33-year-old kid standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, freestyling I have a dream. That part wasn't even written down. The stuff that was written down, he got past that. And then the sister told him, tell me about your dream, Martin.
I hear you.
And then he freestyled that part. Dr. King was not trying to make history. Don't get temporal dissociation. He was trying to make the future better.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to make history, he was trying to make the future better. When, and by the way, what he was saying, think about him as a radical Afrofuturist, not a historical figure. When he's standing there in 1963 and he's talking about an America that has black children and white children playing together, that could have been Star Wars or Star Trek. That had never happened in 400 years. He spoke into existence a better future that we're now living into. He was a futurist, not just a historical figure. Reverend Jackson, in '88, runs a brilliant campaign in '88, talking about hope in '88. Almost beats Dukakis in '88, comes up short. He could have walked away bitter, but he thought about the future, and he told the Democratic Party, hold on a second. I have a lot more votes out in the country than I have delegates in this hall. If you want me to endorse Dukakis, you have to change these rules so that in the future, someone else who comes along and runs a campaign like this will have a fair opportunity. They changed those rules. 20 years later, a young man named Barack Obama came along, ran the exact same race with the exact same outcome. Hillary Clinton's folks said, well, we're going to win California, we're going to win New York, we don't have to worry about Obama. They didn't read the rules. They didn't read Jesse's rules. And they woke up in a body bag because Reverend Jackson was a futurist thinking 20 years down the road for a Barack Obama. We got to talk about the black future. That's the challenge that we have right now. When you have a generation of giants, like an Andy Young, like an Ella Jo Baker, like a Fannie Lou Hamer, like a Bayard Rustin, it is hard to just not be transfixed by what they did and to want to make sure the whole world knows. But they weren't thinking about the history, they were thinking about the future. What is the black future? At this point, I would turn in about 20 Black History months for one Black Future weekend. Okay? What is the black future? The reason John Hope Bryant is so important is because that's what he's focused on. Now look, watch the rhythm here. 68, Dr. King is killed. 88, 20 years later, you have Reverend Jackson running and changing the rules. 20 years later, 2008, you have Barack Obama. It's about to be 20 years again, 2028. What is the next iteration? What is it? There are two futures that are available, not just to black folk, but to humanity. Two futures. They are both determined by technology. We keep talking about AI, AI, AI. The reality is that the AI they're talking about by itself is going to give you a future that you don't want. Think about the Terminator, okay? Think about a techno-fascist future where villainous people have machines that dominate everybody and there's no freedom. That's one future that's available because of AI, artificial intelligence. But there's another intelligence. There's another intelligence. Ancient intelligence, AI. Ancestral intelligence, AI. Your intelligence, AI. That's what's missing from the conversation. That's why when John Hope Bryant says we're going to future-proof our community, see, John is slick. Don't let this man fool you. He has diagnosed you down to a T. And he understands that he's got to shift us now from honoring our past to also owning our future.
Right.
That's the John Hope Bryant move.
Right.
Yep.
That's where
Exactly.
we're moving now as we go into 2028. And honoring our public sector brilliance, but now extending that to our private sector brilliance. And then understanding what some folk want to do with technology, take away jobs, replace people with robots, displace millions and millions of people. But if you take that same technology and put it in other folks' hands, people who have ancestral intelligence, ancient intelligence, what would we do with that same technology? We wouldn't create the Terminator, we would make Wakanda real. We would make Wakanda real. We would take technology and use it to uplift people. We wouldn't have a villainous view, we would have a heroic view. We wouldn't dismiss our ancestors, we would honor our ancestors, and we would be in a position, what problem can we not solve with these tools and this heart? Think about that. People keep telling me and John, when you're gonna see what John's about to do, which is about to change the entire direction of AI. I'm not getting ahead of you, John, but I'm just too excited about you. People keep telling me and John, you're talking about AI evangelism. And the people talk to me and John honestly sometimes, so we be off with folks, big names, big money. They get comfortable, they tell us what they really think. Bishop, you've been in the same situation. They'll tell you what they really think.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, you know, John, I love what you're talking about. I love it. It's great.
Don't look at it.
But 99% of these black kids, if we're honest, 99% of these black kids, they don't know anything about AI. I mean, if we're honest. John says, you know what? You're correct. And 99% of white folk don't know anything about it either yet.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
it's new. That's called equality. We are all equally ignorant about all this new stuff. So don't count out a people. Don't count out a people that have been able to take just praying hands and marching feet and change their country. Don't count out a people. Don't count out a people.
This may be the first time
Yeah.
in my lifetime that I have seen an even playing field.
Even playing field.
Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what the future's going to bring. The floor is level, it's flat, and we have no excuse
Yes.
not to be able to be competitive because we're all starting at ground level zero.
Yes.
So this is our chance either to bellyache and groan about it or to take advantage of this opportunity and lead the charge into the future and control the destiny. And while we're doing it, we have to realize that while we're sitting up here staring at ChatGPT, other countries all over Africa, all over the
Nigeria,
world,
sure.
they are moving ahead
Yes.
with technology. You're not just racing against America is not the world. We're just a part of the world, and we need to understand that the floor is flat right now.
Yes.
If we leap now, we can succeed. But if we wait, we will miss our opportunity and we'll be on the back of the bus again. I'm over time. I've got to stop. I could go on with you guys for a long time.
I know we have to go. I just want to say one thing to you, Bishop.
Yeah.
You have been a balm to folk that you've never met. There are people who have not ended their lives because of your words. There are people, we gotta just tell the truth about who this man is. There are people who are at the end of the end of the end and heard a word from you and they're here with their children. There are people who are in prisons right now who are sharing your word. There are people whose marriages have been saved by your word. There are people who have businesses now that they started to know what they were doing and you helped them. You've forgotten their names and have helped them and they're now millionaires. And to have you on this stage, to be here with the legends like Andy Young is an honor and we love you. You need to know that. We need to know that we know who you are. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for your courage Thank you for your participation.
I love
You
you.
were wonderful.
I love you. I love you.
Great.
I love you.
Ladies and
Give it up for
gentlemen,
John. I hope he's courageous.
ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, I hope you understand that history does not feel historic when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day. But that does not mean that the moment is not historic. What you've experienced here, two of the top TV anchors in the world who happen to be black. The author of one of the most important books on Dr. King's legacy ever. And the black bishop, the black pope in the world. A man who does not get the credit he deserves. Can you please show him in particular some love? Bishop, turn around.